Test 1, 2, 3.
We're just trying to.
Photo over.
No, but the light just might. That light? Oh. It's like you always come.
Excuse me. Are you filming this?
Yes.
Is that going to be like that the entire time? Like that?
Yes.
That's unreasonable.
Okay.
Nobody wants that. How many people want to have that light in their eyes the whole meeting? Anybody? No. You got to do something with that, okay?
But I don't mind it at all. I'm with him.
And I'm with him too. Don't worry about it, Chad.
Okay.
You can go sit somewhere else.
Elizabeth, can you hear me now? Hi there, sir.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks. No, pleasure. I'm glad good to see you again.
My pleasure.
And if you don't mind wearing the lavalier like you did last time.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
Hopefully
Well, you know, the funny thing to do is to, like, hold it like this now. You
Oh,
know?
sure,
I'm like,
yeah.
nah, well, that's ridiculous. Let me see. Let's see how far can I wander with this thing.
It's the same one you had last time. You
Okay.
got pretty far, but go ahead. Give it a shot.
I'm gonna post it right here. When I do Q&A, I'll carry it around. Yeah, of course we should. Well, I think Vic's doing the randomized question box, right? Yeah. Okay, great.
Hi, nice to see you again. Linda Salter, the director. Good. I'm glad you could come tonight. Thank you. Yes. I think it's great. The weather held up. Yeah. But I will be doing our introduction. Just let me know. Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's 6:02.
Hey, good evening. Welcome, neighbors. Is it on, Jack?
I don't have control of it.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Yeah, okay. Good evening and welcome. Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you for coming to our town hall. I would like to introduce Raul Campillo. He is the District 7 council member, and he will be speaking tonight about the accomplishments for the last 4 years and his goals for the next 4 years. And at the end of the meeting, he will be answering questions from the audience. So enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I got to make sure the microphone's working for us on our virtual meeting.
Yep.
All right, very good. For those who haven't met me before or who weren't here a couple years ago when we were right here in this space, my name is Raul Campillo. I represent you on the San Diego City Council. We are District 7, all the way from the 5 freeway down the hill from USD, all the way to the 125 freeway, north of Friars Road until you get to the 15, and then you... Sorry, is that for me, Crane? Let's turn it up a little bit more. All right, very good. I got to put it right here next to me. Vic, can we turn it up a little bit on that too, just in case? All right, excellent, and no feedback. Okay, so, and of course, in the neighborhood of Serra Mesa, in the planning group of Kearney Mesa right here because of the little sliver that cuts down the 15. If the person who pointed that out to me last time is here, I never forgot that moment. But we have a lot to cover, and town halls like this are pretty much my favorite part of the job. Instead of doing one state of the district speech where, 157,000 people across, several hundred square miles are like, hey, come and see me for once. I do these in each sort of region of the district, and so this is our 3rd out of 4. And we have had some great questions. I'm sure you have some great questions as well. And we're going to start briefly with a recap of the last 4 years and then move forward to what we're going to be looking at in this upcoming year and sort of the refocusing of what we want to see in the city and the next 4 years of me being your council member. Appreciate all of you who voted for me, especially considering you had no other choice. So my wife liked that one. The baby was 2 months old, and it was like, hey, great, no race. But nonetheless, we have not stopped working for you. I'm really grateful for all the folks who've reached out to my office, for Serra Mesa, and in this area in particular, Miles, Noel. Where is Miles? He's in the back. For all of you who call and email, and he helps take care of your issues. I see we got San Diego Police Department here as well. Thank you for everything you do to help keep us safe. And if you, just over the course of 4 years, you know, we've gotten a lot of things done, a lot of small things done in Serra Mesa, trying to get bigger things done in Serra Mesa as well. And I'm in the community no less than once a week, driving through to meet with people, taking pictures myself, getting my car fixed at, to be honest, TBH Auto Care over on Arrow Drive, any number of things. I am around the neighborhood, and so if you want to have a specific meeting, grab a coffee or something, please reach out to my staff so we can set that up. Let's start with public safety, and you'll notice that thematically, the way I'm addressing core issues start with public safety, then we talk about infrastructure, and then we talk about a strong local economy. Those are the three things that I think the city needs to refocus on, things that we can do well when we are funded and when we pay attention to them. And I think what's an interesting thing is that people call me Right Along Raul at the city, because pretty much a lot of departments, they know that they'll get an email from my staff saying the council member wants to come and do a day with you, or someone on your staff, to see what your job is like. That means doing ride-alongs with SDPD out of both Eastern and Western Division. Eastern Division, obviously, right here, right off of Arrow, and doing the nighttime shift with them from 8 until whatever time in the morning, until they start writing their reports before they get out. Did some of those when I was a deputy city attorney and prosecutor before getting elected. I've done that with the fire department, doing 24-hour ride-alongs with them, a full shift that they work. I've done that at several firehouses throughout our district to get a sense of what they do, and sleeping in the bunk and waking up at whatever time in the middle of the night, middle of the morning, and jumping onto the fire engine and going with them. Gives you a whole new set of appreciation for what people do to protect us throughout the night. Lifeguards, we've even done a full day with the lifeguard chief from 9 to 5 to get a sense of his operation along the beaches. Lifeguards do go into the river if they need to do a rescue or a cliff rescue, but so they don't come into District 7 all that much. But getting a sense of that, but also things like purchasing and contracting, things that our departments put out to try to procure asphalt to fill potholes, or pens for the city attorney's office, all the different things that you got to go through to make sure we're spending money wisely, getting a sense of those contracts. And then the people who bid on those contracts, the small businesses who want jobs, or not jobs, but rather money flowing to them to provide a service to the city, and understanding how difficult that is. All those sorts of things are really important, but with public safety, doing those ride-alongs to get a sense of what's going on is really important, and why I spend so much time focusing on it. Those experiences have shown us things like progress that we've seen, tools like the smart streetlights. How many of you are familiar with the smart streetlight program that we have in the city? Okay, we're going to talk a lot more about that in a minute. We've helped catch many violent criminals through those, and we'll go through some of that history in a minute. But it's not just the technology. It is the men and women who show up every day and drive, walk, run, hustle through the community to answer your calls. We've worked on state legislation to deal with hate crimes and hate littering at the state. We got a state law passed with our Assemblymember, Chris Ward, who took one of our ideas, authored it, made it better, and passed it at the state. So we've worked on that. And behavioral health, working on issues of folks who are suffering from addiction. It would blow your mind to know how many detox beds we had in the city of San Diego that were Medi-Cal eligible. In essence, you know, there's lots of pickleball. It's always loud. Don't get started on that one, right? Yeah. Next meeting, Councilmember. My HOA went through that. Just so you have a sense of this, there's definitely insurance backed or private care for folks who are going through addiction and through withdrawal and have detox beds, but there was only how many beds in the city of San Diego that were Medi-Cal eligible. Essentially, if you were low income and you have state-provided health insurance or benefits, does anybody know how many beds we had in the city of San Diego that were Medi-Cal eligible? 18?
Not many.
Not many? Zero? Would it blow your mind if I said the number was 2?
No.
2. We all know more than a handful of people who need detox right now, and people who are asking for it. A lot of our family members and a lot of our coworkers, but working on a piece of legislation at the city so that instead of having to wait 18 to 24 months to get a conditional use permit, developers could get a limited use permit so that they could transform buildings to have detox beds in them. And Father Joe's Villages in downtown are soon to open a whole new set of those, more than 40 of them. So, going up by thousands of %. We obviously have a lot more work to do, but we are going to see a lot more of mental health beds and detox beds, which are like the first step for a person coming about because of a small land use change that we proposed. And small impacts like that, literally one sentence in an ordinance has a really outsized impact when you know what you're looking for. And my staff found that idea and gave me that idea, and we ran that idea and got it done. So public safety is everything from police and fire and lifeguards to taking care of people who are struggling with addiction. Fire safety, how many of you have watched the news? How many of you are thinking about fire right now? Definitely been on our minds, and knowing that the San Diego Fire Rescue Department, when the LA fires started, called Chief Logan, said, what are we up to? What are we prepared for? And he was saying, well, we have sent a few support up to LA, but we have kept everything back as much as we can to help us if we have fires here, because firefighting coming across the border, can't rely upon that. East, we're not going to wait for people to get here from El Centro and to get here from Yuma. So we had most of our firefighting resources in the county still here. And they were working night and day to make sure that any fires that did pop up were taken care of. The only major fire at this point, I would say every fire is deeply important because it could get out of control, but the only major fire we really had that actually caused dramatic damage was near the border, in the south. But as far as I'm aware, no structures were actually burned from that, but it did ruin the air quality for a week and even longer. And it was scary for people down there. But all that's to say is that our fire department was on top of it, ready to go. And when I asked them, so where are our extra strike forces at? Rancho Bernardo, up in San Dieguito, that's where all the intelligence, all the wind technology, all the things that San Diego Gas and Electric has to help us determine where fires might pop up. That's where they put the resources at those moments in case a big fire got out of control. And the ones that we did have down here in Mission Valley, ones that we did have in Grantville, Gilman Fire, a couple that were in the northern part of the city were tackled really, really quickly. And part of that's because we didn't have 100-mile-an-hour winds. We were able to get our air resources up into the air and tackle it, and they were prepared for that. And I would say that in the last year, we reinvested in an extra fire helicopter to be able to be prepared for that. We gave raises to our firefighting pilots so that other jurisdictions wouldn't poach them away from the city. So that was a smart raise, I'd say. All that sort of thing. What I have behind us too, this app, Genesis, this is the fourth time I've forgotten what the public-facing one is called. Watch Duty, you've probably seen that app. This is the one that San Diego Fire Rescue Department recommends, and Watch Duty actually takes information from this application and use it for theirs. So this is the one that's recommended by the city so that you can know what might be going on. Luckily, it rained. And it rained significantly for us to be able to know that our risk has dropped, but always being aware. We learned those hard lessons from 2003 and 2007 in the city and in the county, and so we've definitely addressed that significantly. Where wildfires can continue to pop up, I know we as a city have not done enough to address the amount of brush we have growing in canyons and in public spaces around the city. I appreciate the clap. Tell the truth.
That's why I'm here, Ronald.
That's right. So there's a couple components to that. Staffing, that's the word that I hate to tell everybody as to why things don't get done, but staffing is almost 90% of the issue. and emphasizing the fact that this is not something we want to take our eye off of anywhere close. At the Public Safety Committee, of which I'm the vice chair for the City Council last week, all 4 council members told the fire marshal, Tony Tosca, said, we have open FTEs, full-time employee slots, that have not been filled for brush management, brush abatement. We have to not let the budget deficit that we're facing right now be the excuse for not filling those. Like, we have to get those done. The public expects us to get that done. Not that it's the easiest thing to find people who are qualified to get that job and go do it, but there's really no excuses. And I know that none of you would ever accept an excuse if there is a fire and that wasn't there. It's like, no, prioritize this now. I know there's a hiring freeze at the city right now, but that's an emergency position that's not subject to the hiring freeze. So we should be targeting that immediately. I will say, how many of you have heard in the news about the product called Citrotech? How many of you seen the news about that product? Good, a lot of you. We were able to get that for particular parts of the city through a grant. The San Diego River Conservancy, of which I'm one of the members, gave a grant to the San Diego Fire Department to purchase this product. They're allowed to use it anywhere within the San Diego River watershed. It's because of state dollars going to that particular watershed at the moment. A lot of Serra Mesa falls into that because of the nature of the canyons going into the San Diego River. But the grant wasn't big enough for us to supply it citywide or even across the entire watershed. So saying to the mayor, if we're going to do an emergency contract, let's go get this stuff so that we can put it on plants around homes along canyons so that your homes are less at risk. Because if we can't go in because we don't have either a permit to go cut certain plants, believe me, yeah, I know that sounds ridiculous, but yes, we would encourage everyone to just go cut plants in canyons, except that you're not allowed to cut all these plants. It seems intuitive, but it's not the best idea. So this product, which is EPA certified, does not harm animals, plants. It's basically food ingredients. It's like a citrus salt that you mix with water, and it makes sure that the fire stays at a very, very low level. That is a tool that we have. And in fact, the city of San Diego is like one of the first cities in the country to use it. So we're pretty proud of that. But encouraging small things like that have outsized impact is what we've been doing over the last several weeks to make sure that that we're safe rather than sorry. Proactive fire prevention. If you're wondering well, I know a lot of you live in this community right here, so it probably doesn't apply if you don't have a lot that has a lot of open land space or brush or trees on it. But if you live in other parts of Serra Mesa that do go up to canyons and you have a long backyard or something like that, to understand what the law requires of you in terms of cutting back up to 100 feet of space from your, what do they call it? Not your house, but your structure, right? A structure that's part of your property. Let us know so that we can get the fire department to come and do an inspection and give you advice and tell you what's going on. And if your neighbors aren't doing it, I'm not saying any of you here deserve this, but like it is a responsibility of homeowners to take care of their property to a certain degree. It's part of their community responsibility and for their own well-being. So and it is against the law to not take care of that property to 100 feet, just to make it very, very clear. So that we can have inspectors go out there and make sure, you knock on doors and say, hey, you're out of compliance and we need you to get this done as quickly as possible. And then what I would say, we're going to get to questions about fire, so don't think we're done about that. But ultimately, we're seeing a lot of neighborhoods put together fire safe councils where it's essentially kind of like a neighborhood watch, but it's designed for people to go try to identify fire risks, to notify homeowners, notify the city. It's a shared responsibility, though I'd say the lion's share is on the city, not on you, to make sure that all of this is protected. And so, not to end the fire discussion now, but we will pick it up later. Let's talk about district infrastructure for a second. So public safety, if we don't do that right, well, things like insurance become more expensive, car break-ins cost you money, the doing business is difficult in San Diego. Taking care of public safety drives down cost of living. Infrastructure. direct infrastructure in the neighborhoods is how we also keep prices and cost of living down. Not prices, but cost of living, because inevitably one of you is going to trip over the sidewalk if you haven't already, or your kid is going to go over the handlebars when they hit a bump, or something's going to break on your car when you bump into it. Things like that. Taking care of that is really, really important for your pocket economy, but it's also really good jobs in construction that we need to be getting done, and that helps the local economy, particularly when you hire local workers. What I would say is that in the last 4 years, 191.5 miles of roads were repaired in District 7, which is more than the 1/9 share that you would expect for one council district. Doing lots, if you live on a cul-de-sac, let me just apologize now. I get it. I grew up on a cul-de-sac. I know it gets not the attention it deserves. In terms of what the council and the mayor have been trying to do over the last 4 years is bang for your buck to try to get those key pathways done, which isn't to say we don't care. It's just to say that that was a different type of funding structure to get bigger things done, and that typically leads to better traffic safety and things like that as well. So don't try to, I'm not trying to say mission accomplished here. I'm just trying to say, let us know how we can help you and try to prioritize your stuff. I know that we've seen cul-de-sacs recently. I know that there's a couple in Terrasana that were just in the worst shape you've ever seen in your life. And those just got paved this last month. So we can try to prioritize things that are public safety problems as they relate to infrastructure. In Serra Mesa, we've installed the unleaded fuel tank, repaved Village Glen Drive, West Canyon Drive, Arrow Drive, protected bike lanes on Gramercy Drive, so that, and if you're wondering about bike lanes, because I know there's a lot of next door bike lanes comments, let me be very clear. City revenue that we have control over, that we put in bike lanes, we definitely do spend some money on bike lanes, and typically they're at very dangerous spots. The majority of the money that you're like, hey, you spent that on bike lanes, that's money that comes from SANDAG, that's part of the regional transportation program, that's on an early priority list, that when we get that money, we get to repave or restructure or redesign that road, and it's got to have a bike lane on it for us to do that. So I just want you to know that if you're thinking, oh man, the city of San Diego is totally just spending so much money on bike lanes, it's really part of grants that we have to put it in there. I think that they're important, but I want you just to know that those funding streams, they're not entirely intuitive, and they're not entirely within our capability to just redesign a road and say, no, we're not going to do that. What I will say is that one thing that is infrastructure, but also public safety related, that I'm going to be advocating for in the next 4 years, is making sure that, I know that a lot of disabled parking spots were gotten rid of, and that was a big mistake. So going to push to get those back in place is really important. But if you had a bike lane question, if it's in the box, just, you already know the answer. Workforce improvements. This is economic development. This is making sure we create great jobs. This is making sure that people who work for the city or have contracts with the city are making the right wages so that they can continue to live in San Diego. And just to put this in perspective for our region, 4.6% unemployment rate last month. 5% is considered kind of the target, and we are below that target on like a national and regional level, right? I want everybody to job. I don't want to have anybody to be looking for a job. But when you look at things relatively, 4.6, we are in a strong local economy position. That's not to say that businesses are finding it easy to do work between local regulations and between state regulations. California is undeniably a state that's more difficult to do business in. I will just say, I know this personally, and know that there's about 50 different rules that I didn't know before I was, putting something together, and it's like, oh wow, no wonder people don't like running a small business in the city of San Diego. So trying to make those things easier on the state and local level is a priority of mine. And so we're seeing the local economy rebound pretty strongly, especially when it comes to tourism. San Diego's always been a tourism center. $14.6 billion in our local economy last year came from tourism, and that supports jobs, that supports businesses, hotels, A lot of that's downtown, but a lot of that's around the city as well. 32 million people visited San Diego last year to come here for any number of events. I just had an update from our tourism marketing district today at City Council in the committee that I'm the chair of, Economic Development. And 1 in 8 jobs in our region depends on tourism. That is a huge chunk, right? That's like 12.5%. So keeping that in mind, that's something that we need to continue to make strong. And our average hotel occupancy rate outpaced Los Angeles and San Francisco. We're 3rd in terms of occupancy rate in the country, which is like an argument for maybe we need more hotels, but that's one thing at a time, right? What I'll say is this: I asked the question, where is the hotel occupancy more than us percentage-wise? Honolulu and New York City. So, I mean, those are places where there's lots and lots and lots of tourism, like literally worldwide destinations. San Diego is a worldwide destination, and our economy is thriving because of that. Now, if we improve our infrastructure and we keep public safety going well, that only continues to get better. And I'll just end with this before we jump over to budget, because I know there's probably a lot of talk about the budget, or at least questions about the budget. Who knows, in the United States of America, you take all the big cities in the United States of America. If you rank them from 1 to 100, what would we be, the city of San Diego, in terms of safest? Would we be the safest city, with 2nd safest, 3rd safest, 4th safest, 50th safest? Does anybody know? Anybody have a guess? In the 20s? Third, 10? You got an answer? No? We're the 2nd safest big city in America. How many of you find that to be a surprising statistic? Okay. Number 1, I believe, was San Antonio, and they spend way more money on public safety than we do. The reason I tell you this is because in the last several budget years, we've spent roughly $450 to $460 per resident of the city of San Diego on our police department. And public safety is bigger than police, but I just want to focus on policing for a second. San Francisco and Los Angeles aren't anywhere as close to safe as us, and they spend $600 to $700 a person on police department. So you have to say, we're doing really, really well with very, very much less, I should say. And the reason is because we have a really good police department that relies on technology, that is out there on the beat, that is tackling our violent crime significantly. That also means our city attorney is prosecuting misdemeanors really well and preventing gun violence. That means our district attorney is doing a really good job prosecuting felonies. On the whole, we are one of the safest big cities in America, and we have a less than 5% unemployment rate across the county, and we are 3rd in hotel room rate in the United States. Public safety and economy, those two things go together. When the economy thrives, we can be safer. When we're safer, the economy thrives. And so that's why I'm really focusing on these issues deeply. But if we're going to talk about those issues, we got to talk about the budget situation. How many of you are familiar with what the next year's fiscal budget, which starts on July 1st, what our budget deficit is at the moment? Projected, of like what the amount of revenue relative to the number of expenses. Do you know what it is? $250 million in the hole. You were off by 8, but that's okay. You rounded to the most logical number, which is just 250, right? You've been reading the paper and watching the news and following our Facebook account. So that is a tough hole to climb out of. And I will just say that when you look at that regularly, or when you look at that, it makes governing really hard. It means there will be budget cuts. It means that we're going to have a lot of fights at the city council with the mayor about what that looks like, okay? And I just want to be very clear, this situation didn't happen overnight, and there's a lot of reasons for it, but let's just start with the principal reason we have that type of budget deficit. On July 1st, we have a projected amount of revenue we're going to have come in, and we say, oh, we're going to provide all of these services, and we're going to have these contracts for things that our workers can't do, and we have some targeted raises that are coming in, and then there's one other big part of that equation that I didn't say yet. Pension. So on July 1st, every city, every state, basically every city has this issue, right? You have your workers, and they have a guaranteed pension by negotiated. It's preserved under law, and it's one of our first bills is to pay the worker their paycheck, and a portion of that we pay goes to pay their retirement, and that goes into SD-SERS, which is the shorthand for the employees' retirement system, and it's that amount goes up and down every year based on what the actuaries are saying we owe, and it has essentially a really, really high floor that we have to pay every year, and we always pay it on the first of the year, so we don't accrue interest throughout the year. And whatever the actuary tells us, we have to pay it. There's no arguing with it. I don't think we should argue with it. I think we should pay it. But principally, that problem exists because 20 years ago, we were facing a budget deficit just like we are right now, and the leaders at the time said, what should we do about this? Should we ask for a tax increase? Should we increase fees? Should we cut budget? What should we do? And they said, hey, let's do what we did in 1997. Let's go and ask the pension if we can not pay them and defer that payment for a while. Here's what happened in 1996 and 1997. City manager at the time asked, can we raise some tax or can we get some fees going? The city council member said, no, San Diego doesn't do that. It's like, okay, well then our only other suggested thing here is to ask the pension if they'll let us defer the payment over time. And if the total fund needed, if every city employee retired today, which does not happen, right? Workers work for 30 years and there's revolving workers and it goes on and on. 100% actuarial liability for the city pension is several $billion. Right now, we're at about 71% of the money we need if everybody retired today, okay? Back then, they said, well, we're pretty close to 100 and the economy's going good under Bill Clinton. Why don't we not pay that? And if we get to like 85% underfunded, we'll have to pay it back in 2 years, the total amount. And there was an agreement that, okay, that's what we're gonna do. Wasn't the best idea, but they set themselves a limit and said if it gets to right there, we have to pay it all back so that we don't continue to have an underfunded pension. In 2002, what did they do? They said, actually, let's lower it to 75%. Double down on the thing, right? So, and sure enough, in 2001 and 2002 and 2003, we didn't have the best economy in the world. And so very, very quickly that spun out of control. We went under 75%. And did we have the money to pay back the pension to get it to full actuarial liability funded? No. So that's when this investigations happened, and that's when all these problems really unraveled. And so we're still facing that problem to this day. We're on track to pay off the pension, meaning get to 100% of the funds needed if every employee retired on the next day in 2044. So we pay bit by bit by bit. We should be paying like $150 to $175 million a year to the pension. Instead, we're paying like $450 million based on the problems created 20 years ago. So that's $200 million, $300 million that we don't get to have right now. And what's the budget deficit? $258 million. These things are historical. And I'm sure that many of you know that I offered up Measure E on the last budget as a 1-cent sales tax to really make sure our budget can be closed, fill that gap, and be able to invest in tons of infrastructure that we need, stormwater infrastructure, roads, and really get those projects going that are 20, 30, 40 years behind and we have to fix with emergency repairs. If you didn't vote for it, I don't take it personally. I understand why you didn't vote for it. In fact, 3,506 more people voted against it than voted for it. It was really close. In fact, it's the closest we've ever gotten in the city of San Diego to passing a tax, far closer than ever before. But what I'm trying to tell you is that over the next 2 years, I'm going to be working extra hard and making sure the council works extra hard and making sure the mayor stays focused too, so that if you didn't vote yes this time, hopefully you'll be there in 2 years and say, you know what? They've made sure that the police, fire, lifeguards are taken care of. They've been cleaning more brush than they did in the past. They fixed more roads than we have in the past. Getting those focused things that the city's supposed to do well, and hopefully you'll get to yes next time. And understand that this is a historical thing that we could have closed. We were close. If you didn't vote yes, I understand. There's a lot of mistakes that are happened, and I don't blame you. I totally get it. In 2 years, give it another fair shot, and hopefully we'll be able to get there and then continue to invest in big things. Anyway, so long story short, when I was in 10th grade, they said, let's raid the pension again. Fast forward 22 years, I'm here now, and I said, no, let's see if we can get that tax passed and close that gap and fix this the right way, the way they should have 25 years ago. But maybe next time. But let's keep our eye focused. Public safety. Being the second safest big city in America, well-trained, mission-driven police department. I'm telling you right now, we are really, really grateful and lucky that Mayor Gloria picked Scott Wall to be our next police chief. He's been with the department for a long time. He's putting some programs in place, understands how the department works, and fundamentally, we are in really good shape right now. And being the second safest big city in America, while not putting as much money towards it as our sister cities in California, says a lot about how good our our police department is. Let's talk about streetlights. How many of you are familiar with the streetlight program? Okay, essentially, we have 500, close to 500, but basically 500 smart streetlights throughout the city. They are strategically placed by the police department on street lights. It's a camera that can record footage that is stored for roughly 15 days. If a crime has happened in front of that camera, the police department can go look at that footage. There's no one's at SDPD headquarters sitting behind the camera watching you walk down the block. If a crime happens in that vicinity, they go and find the time. It's all saved up in the cloud. And at the end of 15 days, it gets deleted. If you're uncomfortable with where one of them is, let us know. We can put you in contact with the police department so that they can move it to a different streetlight. A lot of organizations have said that, and the police department says, no problem. We'd rather you feel comfortable. We'll put it on a different streetlight that won't bother you. We have many of them along freeway exits and entrances, key roads where people are going to be traveling so that we can monitor things like that. Who knows what's also within a smart streetlight besides the camera recording footage? The license plate reader, absolutely right. An automatic license plate reader looks at license plate, runs them through a database and says that car has been used in a crime, or the person who that car is registered to has been used in a crime. They've stopped numerous kidnappings. They've caught people with guns and drugs in their cars. They've tracked down burglars in those cars. This is one of the best investments we've made, and I'm just going to put this number out there. I'm not saying it's causation, but it's definitely a really good correlation. In the city of San Diego, since we've put up smart streetlights, what has been the percent reduction in car thefts in 1 year? Take a couple guesses. 30%, 40%. Citywide, 19%. In the downtown region, in downtown area, mid-city division, which covers kind of like Balboa Park and the neighborhoods around downtown, 50%, okay? These things are smart, and that's not a pun. This was a really, really good investment we did, and I think that we need to get more of them. They tried to put them on some streetlights that didn't have 24-hour power, because there's some streetlights that have 12-hour oscillating power. You need 24-hour power going to the streetlights, so they're trying to move some of those around. I've said, hey, we'll take them. District 7 wants them. If other council members don't want them, give us theirs. I don't know why they wouldn't want them, and just like the proof is in the pudding. You know what else they do? They actually caught footage of a person who was charged with murder in downtown. Not recently, this was in the prior iteration of smart streetlights, but this is a really good example. It saw footage of a murder. A person was charged with murder. The police and the district attorney's office went and got that footage. What did the footage show? It was a self-defense. The person was not murdering somebody. It helped a person get out of jail when it showed what had actually happened. Evidence cuts both ways. That's really important. On the other side, they caught a person who murdered a downtown business owner. 2 people went in with a wig and a mask and went and shot a guy, and I don't know, I forget the details of why they went after him. But then the person with the gun walks several blocks down. Imagine this is the smart streetlight. Goes right here, takes off his mask, looks around, right along a brick wall that could say just exactly how tall he was, right? So these things are very, very important, and I think that they've been very effective. And so as we see, if we get more grants, if we choose to invest in this upcoming budget, believe me, I know that many of you are like, hey, we'll take them. So we're going to continue to work for you to make sure that you stay safe in that regard. So infrastructure, looking into the future. over the past 4 years, besides the hundreds of roads that we've repaved and the street light program that we've gotten, there's still a lot of street lights that are out, but we've started to close that gap. The gap just kept getting bigger. The number of street lights we needed to fix, it's because we only had like 5 or 6 electricians on city staff because they hadn't gotten a raise for 10 years before 2021. Being a private electrician was way more lucrative than coming and working for the city. Smart targeted raises like that help us deliver city services for you. We also got a specialized contract to go out and have a contract fix them faster so that we can close the gap. And then once we close the gap a lot, we don't have to rely on outside contracts. We can rely on city workers to keep doing it. But a lot of the technology is really old, where if one street light went out, a whole bunch of them would go out like it was a Christmas light, like, you know, traditional Christmas lights. Fixing those sorts of things in the city, it's really, it's counterintuitive. A lot of things seem like they're simple to fix, and then you run into it and you're like, why are we living in the 1970s still? A lot of things are like that. So making sure that we fix the infrastructure and upgrading it, but that also includes things like parks. That also includes libraries, things that you use on a weekly or even daily basis. You know, that is really, really important to me. But like I said, we're still have a lot of parts of the city that are decades behind. And ultimately, I always say this, plain. If we invest in these things correctly and we hire local contractors to do the work, they spend that money here. It reverberates here. That's your tax dollars in your neighbor's pocket who's spending it at your market, maybe your own business. That has to be part of the equation. It can't be just go for the cheapest possible contract who can bring something down from Riverside to fix a road, because then all that money goes out of our community. You get a nice road, but they get the money that we've spent. We want to keep it in this economy locally. And so you have to say to yourself, do I want to save $10,000 fixing this asphalt road, or do I want to spend $10,000 more on a several $100,000 contract and every dollar stays here instead of going there? That's the sort of thing that you try to balance, and you have the council policies that we debate, which one's more important. If you keep that money locally, there's like a 6 times multiplier effect, and the $10,000 that you spent more actually creates more local economy, a more robust local economy, and so it's actually better spending. And then as we think about economic development, how many of you have tried to renovate your house in the last few years? Okay, last 20 years. All right, a lot more. Okay, how many of you own a small business that you want to do some tenant improvements in? I see like half a hand. Okay, you're just a customer at a small business that wanted to do renovation or something. What was one of the biggest problems other than making sure your contractor showed up at 9 a.m. to do the work? The permit, that's right. I'm developing an idea. Actually, I'm completely ripping off an idea is the right way to say it, but I'm developing it for us. In Phoenix, they have a concept called self-certification or pre-certification, where they essentially say every type of construction that you need permit for that's on this list, and they're usually relatively simple pieces of construction, if you use a contractor that has the licenses and the insurance as put out on this list, you don't need to do the original application process or the first set of inspections or the plan check. You just go get it done. And they make sure that at the end, it's safe. If your contractor doesn't build it right, it's their insurance policy that's on the line. It's their money that's on the line to fix it. But we really shouldn't be getting in the way of small-scale things that most contractors can handle really competently and make you be the one who's waiting forever to get your improvement. Because you're trying to spend that money on your contractor right here, and that's economic activity that is being stifled because we aren't doing the permits right. So borrowing Phoenix's idea, already starting to have the meetings with city staff, with outside groups, construction groups, labor unions, all the different folks who have a stake in the game, to get a sense of like, hey, what is this program going to look like for us? Maybe we copy most of what Phoenix does, maybe we don't. But when it comes to things like, are you building a very tall rise apartment building in the middle of Mission Valley, or are you building something near a landfill, or you're building something that is highly sensitive or particularly unusual, or might have just more sets of danger, and we want to keep it within our plan, that would still go through the normal plan check normal application process for development services that we have at the city. So we don't want to sacrifice safety, but we know that most of the things that you're trying to do in your house can be done quickly, and they ought to be done more quickly. Knowing that as sort of a focus for the next several years, because there's so many people who just are ready to spend their money and get something done for themselves and their businesses and their houses, let's prioritize that and let them do it. It's simple. We shouldn't be getting in the way of that. Last but not least, before we get to the questions, staying focused on what San Diego's can be good at, what it should be good at, things that we are good at already. A lot of it requires funding, but the problem is that if we don't stay focused on public safety and infrastructure and creating a strong economy, a lot of the other things that we want to see in the community, they don't do well. Homelessness is worse when we don't prioritize public safety and infrastructure and a strong local economy, because issues related to homelessness, definitely people who need a lot of mental health help, or someone who needs a cheaper apartment, or someone who just needs a job so they can get back on their feet. Public safety, infrastructure, strong local economy. If you take care of those things, almost everything else in the city takes care of itself. It builds upon itself. So that's my commitment to you over the next 4 years. And if you have great ideas, let me know. The alternative to a good idea I have isn't a bad idea. It's a great idea you might have. So please do let us know what you want us to focus on. But a safe, sound, and thriving San Diego is really what I think when we focus, we can deliver. It's what I'm going to keep doing. We have ideas come to us all the time, and I tell my staff, does that support public safety? Does it support infrastructure? Does it create good jobs? If it doesn't do those three things, we need to not focus on that. Doesn't mean it's a bad idea, but right now, we got to focus. Running a city is very hard, and it's not intuitive, but being focused is really the least we should do for you, but I'm going to make sure we're laser focused on those three things. At this point, I'm really happy to move over to our questions, and I think we have our question box, right? Did everybody turn in a question that wanted to turn in a question? I don't know, people came in from different directions, so.
We only asked for our name.
Just your name? And then you'll be able to ask the question. Some people last time wrote down their question with it, but if you have your name, you get to ask your question directly. And the people in the gym, they don't know what's going on out here, do they? All right. First question goes to Donna Sheehan. Question? Go ahead, ask me. Well, why don't you ask me now, and I'll say it loud for everybody and answer it. They still haven't fixed that? Yeah.
Ever since Olympus won. Ever since they opened the
Okay.
drainage.
Good question. She asked about the terrible drainage at the corner of Arrow and Sandrock that creates a big puddle every time it rains, almost every time it rains. Miles, do we have an update on that sort of issue? Because I know that we have talked with engineering. I know that we've talked with transportation. I mean, it's a recurrent problem that I'm not sure what city staff hasn't figured out what to do there, but it is a recurring problem.
Yeah, it's the property owner's issue that their city is coordinating with their engineers that they hired to get the issue solved permanently. They should have a permanent fix very soon.
I'm gonna repeat what he's saying because I can hear it.
They should have a fix very soon.
Okay. What he's saying is that the determination by the city is that it's, because usually the battle is over whose fault is it, that the city has determined that the developer of that building is their fault for not properly doing the drainage correctly, and the city is working with the engineers that the developer has brought on board to solve the issue. Okay. Is it transportation department that is the one that's focusing on this, or is it engineering and capital projects? Or stormwater? Okay. Stormwater department?
Their code team.
It's their code team. Okay. Does that mean they've been fined for not fixing this at this point?
They have.
So they have been fined for not fixing that problem at this point. That's why you have a guy like Miles who's really nice and writes really good emails to city staff to figure this stuff out.
Is that fine like $75 or?
That's, well, the point made was, how expensive is the fine? I'm not sure. I didn't vote on the fine.
Is it hurting them?
Yes, is it hurting them? Well,
Is it enough for them to take action?
I don't know what the fine level is, but the point being is that at this point, we do have city staff coordinating with them to get the problem fixed. So I don't know if the fine was enough, but they're seemingly paying money out of their pocket to get it done, because it probably is more expensive for them to just keep paying a daily fine than it is to fix it. But good question, and I know that that's been a long one running, so thank you for bringing it up. Let's get to our second question at this point. And if you have like secondary questions on that topic, please do just let me know. Just shout them out. Don't worry about me having to call on you, because there's usually good follow-up questions on that. We're going to go next to Linda Watts. Linda, you got a question?
I have many questions, but I'll just ask a few of them.
Go for it, yeah.
I have major concerns about Kearney Mesa's impact on Serra Mesa residents.
Okay.
On Arrow Drive, like from Kearney Villa Road to Sandrock, they're building 2 new huge complexes, 7 stories plus parking, and I don't even know if they're parking adequate. But if you look at, there's 434 units on one on AMLI, and then ION has like 394 units. So if you double that, because it's gonna take 2 to 4 years, you're looking at roughly 1,600 more people in those streets.
Mhm.
And it's gonna affect Arrow Drive. Arrow Drive is already congested from Kearney Mesa, because you have people going at rush hour from 163, they're cutting down Arrow Drive and they're heading to the 15.
That's right.
So that is impacting. Plus you have the Social Security office, you have the Hebrew school, the French Polynesian school, you have the Rady Children's Hospital, a college campus. All that is on Arrow Drive, and it's just creating a bottleneck. What can be done to solve that, and how do we stop, how do we make Kearney Mesa be more respectful to the Serra Mesa residents who you're impacting? Because our homes are on the south side of those buildings, and they're building these monster buildings, and the ION building is like this, there's no setback. I mean, if there is, it's very little. I don't even know if a fire truck can get back there if there's a fire, but you mentioned fires.
Mhm.
And if that building never goes up, it's probably gonna take our homes with it. And they're building more and more and more apartment complexes. You've already got the Olympus Corsair, which is on that same block. And then you've got Mirabelle, which is on Kearney Village. So you've got 1,000 more people on that commute, plus all the businesses that are there, plus the residents. Our only way out is Arrow Drive and or Sandrock. And now you're building another proposed 5-story building on right there where the old Serra Mesa Library was on Sandrock. So you're impacting our commute in and out of that community, and it's overwhelming. And now there's Uprise, which is the one last building between the ION proposed, or the building that's being built, and then the Olympus Corsair. What's gonna go there? Another monster building, and add more thousands of people to that area already? And when we worked with Olympus Corsair and the developers, we were able to voice our opinions and have them do a setback, have them do no windows on the back side, have them do a brick wall to pad the noise to the Serra Mesa people. But it appears on the ION side that didn't happen. And as I understand it, the bylaws have been amended to do no traffic studies, no density studies. All those studies aren't done. There was no input from the community, the Serra Mesa residents that would be impacted by these huge buildings going up in front. So I don't know what can be done for Serra Mesa to be involved if something goes up at Uprise or any of these other concerns, and what can be done about the traffic on Arrow Drive that has been created between those small blocks, because it does impact the Serra Mesa community a lot. We're very impacted by what Kearney Mesa does.
Sure. Okay. Let me briefly, not briefly, but I'll summarize, because if I briefly summarize it, it'd be really small. Multiple buildings going up throughout Kearney Mesa are driving traffic towards Arrow Drive through Serra Mesa, because the 163 and the 805 conjunction is pretty much San Diego's worst spot in our entire interstate freeway system. And so then there was the part of that conversation that was about actual development and setbacks and traffic studies that get done. Let me be very clear about a couple things. Those developments, let me take a step back even further. So each neighborhood has a community plan that is designed to lay out the zoning and to lay out the economic makeup of an area. And sometimes these plans have more than one neighborhood, just to be very clear, right? And so the Kearny Mesa plan, there's overlapping maps that interact with each other that allow developers to pick a spot and say, we're going to build this much, and the restrictions are less and less depending on how many overlapping exemptions they get based on all these different types of maps. To be very clear, there's like one called, how many of you heard of a sustainable development area? Okay, so that essentially is the idea that there can be a lot more density if you're within a mile walking of a major transit spot. That's usually a trolley stop or where two buses come together. To be very clear, I voted against expansion of the SDAs from half mile to a mile. And the middle part of Serra Mesa is not impacted by that because it's too far from any of those qualifying components. But the edges of Serra Mesa are within spots of that. So the density that is allowed there, they get more exemptions of different types of rules. But they still have to go through permitting, and they still have to go through a lot of studies. What happens a lot in these plans is that they do a giant environmental impact review when they pass the entire plan. It's called a PEIR, programmatic EIR. And they kind of do the environmental studies and the proposed traffic studies if something was built out at the maximum, so that when project by project they come up, each project doesn't have to do its own set of studies. That's how I'm imagining, based on the amount of density you're talking about, the developer who found those spots said, we have these overlapping maps that allow us to do more density, and the programmatic EIR that the city did allows us to not have to do more traffic studies if we cap how much we're building. And they're still building a lot, right? To the extent that those plans are what are called ministerial, it means that if they meet the check marks that the city lays out for them to develop it, city council can't get involved. If it's discretionary, meaning they're trying to do something that the plan map doesn't let them do, it is discretion. It comes to us and we get to vote it up or down, because they're going to ask for a variance or an exemption or some sort of special privilege to do something that the map that I'm talking about doesn't let them do. What it sounds to me like you're pointing out is that the Kearny Mesa map is very, I don't know, loose. I don't know the right word for it. It's very it's very permissive is the right. Thank you. Perfect word. It's very permissive, which ultimately the city council doesn't. When those maps go up, there's the other aspect of this, which is state law. State law requirements require that we have certain amounts of housing built into our general map, which is called the general plan for the city, and each area map, which are the area plans. And rolling back, if we roll it back, a plan for an area, and we say we're going to actually do less housing in some spot, it's illegal to do that unless you find another spot in the city to push it up. So that's what that's a brief summary of that problem. What I'm trying to say is, it seems to me like what you're asking is, how can we reconfigure some of the roads to divert traffic away, because Serra Mesa at this point is it's being pushed to the limit in terms of traffic on Arrow Drive, in terms of Sandrock, Ruffin, other components. People are probably going down Murray Ridge a lot, right? Things like that. So that is something that we can look at to try to say, hey, how can we make the streets work better? Rolling back the density requirements is something that is almost certainly not gonna happen because of the components of our general plan that have to stay in place. That's something we can look at. That's something we can ask the transportation department to look at and say, hey, go look at these streets that are essentially, you say Kearney Villa Road? Kearney Mesa Road? Kearney Villa Road, okay. And reevaluate where people are going from here. Because it sounds to me like what they're doing is they're coming through Serra Mesa to get down to Friars Road, or just going straight to the 15. And then you ultimately have to suffer the brunt of that, right? That is, going for that analysis is what I can promise that we can go dig up to figure out if there's a road realignment. If sometimes it's as simple as getting the streetlights to work faster, and it alleviates things. I know that sounds like, wow, that's all it could take. No, I'm just saying that's one component that could speed things up. Those are things that I can go dig into, that me and Miles can go get briefings on from the transportation department and figure out what's going on. Miles has your email, doesn't he?
Yes.
Okay. I saw a secondary question with a man with a beret, and I'm going to come back to you to finish off the idea. Greek fishing hat.
John Mirabias, I did put a card in that my question is related to what you just talked about.
Okay. You're asking for an exemption. Should we give it an exemption? It's related to the thing. It's an exemption. Go ahead.
Thank you. Saying what you said, my concern, I know other people's concern, is the project proposed, what I'm going to call the Sandrock Road Elevator Apartment Complex, in place of the old library across from the 7th. Well, it's proposed that there's a 60-unit apartment complex going up, but it's only going to have...
Sorry. You all right? Is this still working for you guys? Okay. Sorry to, yeah.
No, that's okay. A 60-unit complex that's only going to have 22 parking spaces, which means 38 plus more cars are going to be put in an area alongside of Glen Haven and Pearlbutt that is already lined with cars because there's not enough parking in that area for the people that live in that area, as well as along Sandrock Road, which is stuffed every night with parking. And nobody will be able to park in the Serra Mesa Mall so knowing that, and also knowing that there was an alternate proposal to renovate the building to turn into a youth center, whatever, don't you think that's absurd? I mean, are you aware of that project? And if so, and since it's not part of the Kearney Mesa, but directly in Serra Mesa, do you have some say? And if you do think that it's absurd, would you fight against having that put in there?
The hardest part of this job is finding things that are absurd and knowing that the law doesn't let you fight against it because it's ministerial instead of discretionary. So what I will say is that it boggles my mind. Does that mean absurd? It boggles my mind that there's... I know what he's talking about. That there's anybody who's developing rental apartments that doesn't think in San Diego they need at least one parking spot per unit. Because the market requires that. We've seen people who do this stuff in North Park who then buy parking lots across the street because they're like, oh, no one wants to rent from me, right? So I do think that it is strange that they're doing that. What I will say about that particular spot is I just had a good meeting earlier this week with folks who are on the community council, worked to, I think also the planning group, but people who've been involved in the community for decades, to say, here is our list of, was it 7 concerns, Miles? Maybe 8? And go get the answers from staff before it gets approved fully. There's a component to it that is a vote for, that's going to come up regarding a funding allocation. The the building he's talking about on Sandrock, it's the old library. There was multiple components that were set to potentially go there, and then the city's real estate department said we'd actually like to go with an affordable development that's going to have 60 units, and we can talk about what affordable means, but it's not homelessness. And fundamentally, it's going to be 30 or so units for. Hold on. You were in the meeting with me, ma'am. 30 units for homeless veterans and 30 other units that are set at a particular rent-restricted income so that folks who don't make enough to pay for market rent will be eligible through a lottery to live there. I've got my homework from that group of people to go get those answers. They're very good questions. But on a thing that's essentially a ministerial approach, I can only make sure that they're following the law. This group of community advocates pointed out that they think the setbacks aren't enough, that there's not enough greenery. There might be a regulation on that they have to put in more. And if not, we can ask them to potentially put it elsewhere. There's multiple components to that we are investigating. So if your question was, am I aware of that? Deeply aware of it. Am I working to get answers to the questions that members in the community have specifically asked me? Absolutely. Have I had staff watching this component for a long time? Yes. We could talk to Miles about that. So we're doing our due diligence to make sure. The base thing is we have to make sure no laws are broken. But for the most part, if no laws are broken, there's not a way to stop most development. That's the baseline.
So saying that the real estate department is dictating what our community gets of the city. Is that what I'm hearing? Is that what you're saying right now? When it's city property and they're deciding what to use it for, multiple departments make decisions on what the potential use is before they ever come to council, before they ever notify us about these things. And part of that is because of this ministerial versus discretionary component. So you tell me if I've answered your question.
Yeah, yes, you have.
Okay.
And the only thing I'll say in terms of what she said, and then I'll leave it be, is, there's been what I'm going to call an overstuffing of apartments everywhere. But in Serra Mesa, it's really starting to happen. There's, aside from the 20 Mesa Arrow Drive units, there's at least 2 apartment complexes going up on Mission Village across from Taft, not to mention the probability that once the land opens up there, who knows what's going to happen. But we've had road shrinkage to accommodate bike lanes, and that makes it difficult because Murray Ridge Mission Village is a main artery that's shrunk down. And so, in terms of what you're saying, I understand, I get it. But at the same time, doesn't there have to be something said about addressing congestion and overpopulating, especially an area like Serra Mesa where there isn't that many ways to get in and out of the community?
Yes, and that's why I voted against expansion of sustainable development areas more than a mile to allow what I call hyperdensity more than a mile from a transit spot. So, but I hear you loud and clear, and yes.
I said what I said.
You want to conclude your comment since I think many people are. Hi, Cindy. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, can we get a commitment from you? I was one of the ones that met with Raul regarding this whole project. This is supposed to come up maybe March 5th. And if we don't get the answers to our questions in a timely manner, we've got to at least have a couple of weeks. And if the documents don't become available, like the lease agreement, then can we get a commitment from you that you will pull the item from the agenda so that we have enough time to actually actually the city should be thanking us for going through and looking through this stuff. Because the city has made so many mistakes when it comes to things by not listening to 7 recently. So we need to have a little bit of time to go through this stuff and make sure that the city is following the laws. And while you voted against the SDA, you did vote for the complete communities. And that's one reason we're getting this project. So I know you don't want your legacy to be this ugly, massive building. I mean, that's not what I'm sure you would want to see as you drive down Serra. So could we have that kind of commitment?
If they don't answer the questions
Timely manner.
in a timely manner,
Yes.
what I'll tell you is this: even if I try to stand up against it, the other council members might not listen, and it can follow through. So you understand what I'm saying? Because I've voted no on a lot of different things that everybody else votes yes on, and so anyway, long story short, we're going to get the answers to the questions, and I'm not going to vote for anything where I haven't had all the questions answered. Is that clear? What I can't promise is that all the questions will be answered to the satisfaction of all the members of the community. That's not what I can promise, but I can promise that we're going to go dig up the answers and make sure that they've gotten what you need to know.
And we are willing to go and talk to the other city council members so that they can understand.
Understood. All right.
But we have to understand, we have to have those answers.
Very good. Final point on your question, which I know many people were wondering about this topic, and that's probably what a lot of the names are in here. But yes,
So you mentioned that Kearney Mesa, some of them are ministerial and not discretionary, and that the city council may be able to help us with the buildings on Kearney Mesa and more going up. Who else can I speak to, or who else can help me, if not, if not the city? Who can help me with this? I mean, we can't, it's a lot of, we've got a lot of apartment complexes already there, more going up, and maybe potential more going up, and it's a lot of density within a very small spot. So are they putting them in Solana Beach? Are they putting them in Del Mar, La Jolla? No, they're putting them in our small area, and it's creating a lot of problems for Serra Mesa.
understood.
Have you seen the setback on Ion?
Sorry, real quick.
Yeah, he's talking
Have
about.
you seen the setback on Ion?
I have not seen the setback on Ion.
Take a look at that.
There is
People
no
walk out
setback.
in their backyards and they're gonna be looking at somebody on a balcony or a window, which is about 10 feet from them. I'm not kidding you.
I know you're not kidding me. I know you're not kidding me. Look,
Please take a look at it, that's all I'm asking.
You say, are they putting them in all these other areas? Well, Solana Beach, different city with its own problems. La Jolla, right? So just because it is a city. La Jolla has, they have some of their own construction issues. What I would say, they have a whole different map. And what I would say is, go looking at Ion. We'll go look at that. There's a building in my neighborhood in Del Cerro where, I think it was September of 2021, we find out from CBS 8, like, oh, do you know that there's a 144 unit building going up right here on the street with 8 houses along the back of it? It's like, no, I don't know that. City staff, if there's something that's ministerial, doesn't raise it to the council member level because they know that we can't stop it. We go ask a lot of questions. We push back. We make sure that the laws are followed, Cindy, and I'm gonna put it into a different context. Let's say on your home, you wanted to build an extra floor or add an architectural change to it or something else. And your neighbors said that doesn't fit with the community, and they went to the city and said, stop you from doing something that you're allowed to do on your house. And if it's ministerial, if you just have to meet the check marks, you get to do what you want on your property. That's what's happening on these lots with these apartments. It's essentially, they created a structure for them to be able to build, and they're taking advantage of that structure. And here's the thing, if you pull the rug out from under a developer and say, actually, we're not going to give you your permits, and even if you follow the law, they sue us, we pay their legal fees, they get damages, and they get to build their building. I agree with you on that there's many components to the specifics of development that need to be changed. just at the city the other day, I was the person who seconded a motion to say, hey, we need to revisit the bonus ADU law because it's being taken advantage of really inappropriately, okay? It's good. Well, when it was like, we're gonna build 1 or 2 of these, it's like, okay, I see where we're going with this. Oh, actually, we're gonna try to do 4. It's like, that's getting a lot. Oh, hey, now there's 15. It's like, this is not what this was meant to be, right? So, changing the laws, absolutely right. But what I'm trying to say here is this. There's another component to this that other cities have run into about development. And it's when they get in the way of allowing more housing, not just, I'm saying it very broadly, but so just run with me. I know there's more legal specifics to this. Cities that have said, guess what, we're not gonna change the zoning to allow more housing in certain spots. That's when the Attorney General comes in and sues you, and they use what's called like the developer prerogative or something like that. And then the developer gets to go in there and do whatever the state says you're allowed to do. The state laws are the ones that trickle down over the course of several years that put us in a place where the city staffer designs these maps, and then it's like, all right, this is the map going forward. I'm frustrated by the fact that we don't have control over decisions in our own communities. That's why I voted no on lots of different things. Believe me when I tell you, I've had more no votes on development-related components, community planning group reform, things like that. So anyway, I feel you, very good questions, and very nice hat.
Talk about the old fries, that's gone now. Let's get to the old fries down here. What do you know?
I got Carolyn Harris's name in here, and if her question's about the fries, we'll go to that.
And that's about buildings, so it's important.
I hear you. I hear you.
Not putting it off right now. Do it.
I gotta respect the program where I'm drawing people's names here.
I bring it up about certain things, and I'm bringing it up about the old fries. That's got to be 1 million apartments. Get it done.
It's a development issue.
Do it.
I'm gonna answer your question before we're done, but I really want to respect the fact that Carolyn Harris showed up and put her name in the box. And
So did I.
what? Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Is Carolyn Harris here?
Yeah, this is me, and we will be discussing the project that was really my issue too. It's a safety issue because I was actually at the meeting when the developer was introducing this last year in November at the Serra Mesa Council, and he basically said the same thing like you said, 60 units for veterans, percentage-wise. He also said there's only going to be 22 parking spaces for the 60 people, where I raised my hand and I said, where the other people are going to go, and he says, well, the veterans don't need to have parking because they don't have cars. Also, Van Kerner said, well, they can also use the side streets on each side of the building. I said, would you like to go there at 5 o'clock? They are both locked with parking cars. There aren't any more available. So we were basically talking against the wall. He was showing us the picture of the building. But what I really kind of wonder is if you put 22 cars next to each other on that lot, the lot is full. There's no house available. There's no space for a house anymore. So there's never have been actually the specs of it, that how from one side to another, or where anything 5 meters this way, 10 meters this way, any measurements of the building, it wouldn't even, that building, the picture that they show in bird's view, it wouldn't even fit on there. And it was supposed to be driving into the back, which is actually apartment buildings. The whole picture, the whole representation is a fraud in my eyes. It doesn't work. So
Let's boil that down into an extra question or two that I can attach to what your community members asked me to do. You're saying to confirm that the square, that the
size of
yeah, describe it again for me because you had a lot of details.
doesn't fit the building or any thing that they actually showed us at that meeting at the Serra Council.
Okay, understood. That is something we can run down for you. Appreciate that question of that. Sir, what is your name?
Jesse Dye.
Jesse Dye. Okay. If I pull your name, we won't give you a second question, but you got a good question. The question is, what is going on at the Fry's?
Which is gone.
Say, yes, it has been demolished. That's right. Are you saying what's next, or are you saying what's currently in process, or what is your question specifically?
It would be, I I know they've had talk of apartments with stores on the bottom. There's a lot of stuff going around, or does nobody really know what's going on down there right now?
Okay, what I can tell you absolutely is that my staff has been in contact. Bay West is the name of the developer. We had the community conversation here a few years ago to talk about this specific concept. The only thing they've done since then is tear down the Fry's, right? They've demolished that. And there was issues with not having demolished it. So what is, from my recollection, and Miles, correct me if I'm wrong, what's supposed to happen is a multi-phased development. I don't think it was much more than 1,000, right? 1,200? Okay. Thanks for knowing that. Give or take. I don't recall there being first floor retail to the development, though I do think that there was components of the development off to the side where they were going to put something, drive through a restaurant, something like that. Okay. They have not been fast to develop their space there, just like a lot of groups that have land that are kind of just sitting there fallow at the moment. Is simply a matter of them either being close to closing and getting closing on their construction loan and getting the money out there to do stuff, and a lot of those fell through. So I'll say with a good level of certainty that whatever financing they were expecting when we had that conversation back in the day got a lot more expensive, and they're just sitting tight before they ultimately start to develop it phase by phase. But if I recall correctly too, it's not the entire set of apartments that go up at once. They build the first set, gain revenue. Say that again?
There's a permit right now for about 300.
Very good. Nothing's built, right? So they're going to go phase by phase, because sometimes when you do a development like this, you build the first set, start to derive revenue from it, so you can refinance and then go continue to finance the next several steps. That's the plan, as far as I know. Nothing's changed. The only thing that I know that's different is that Miles has sent constant emails and phone calls with them demanding that they get out here, and we don't have a final answer from them to come out here and present to you.
They do not respond to emails or phone calls. Not to residents.
You talked with the guy literally yesterday or today?
Yesterday.
Literally yesterday. After how many weeks of waiting for them to get back to you?
Quite a few.
Okay. So, I'll just say that, what did I say was the most frustrating word? Staffing. Second most frustrating word is ministerial. Because there's no sense of duty or obligation to come explain what they're doing to the people who it's going to impact. Thank you for your question. Next up was Stephanie Davis, but you have a secondary component to it. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So, with the Fry's area, with the number of apartments or condos that are built, the current size, the current street already is blocked going down to the freeway, street right out here. At least between 4 and 6, pretty blocked. So, are there plans to widen that street? And how does the police force and the fire department feel about managing the volume of density of structures and people to evacuate, since we've all learned about Pacific Palisades?
Understood. Good question. We'll get to Stephanie Davis next. Is Stephanie Davis here? Very good. We're going to your question next. So, one of the ways to answer your question is going back to the concept of the community maps, because each of those community maps has what's called a full build out, that if they completed every single development on every single piece of parcel of land to the maximum allowable number of units, how many people would live there? And place by place has a designation. My intuition is telling me, because this is usually how this works, and we usually follow how it's usually supposed to work, that the development that's going there fits within the community plan maximum build-out number and that the roads are rated at certain levels based on that build out. Roads have different letter grades depending on how much traffic can go through them, and though we can check to make sure this is true, what I'm going to say is that they've probably determined through this application, if they built those units, do they think that the grading of the road would be able to handle the increased traffic? Intuitively, it probably seems like not. Legally, it has to. So we can go dig up that question, or dig up that answer to that question to make sure that that is true. But that's how things are supposed to happen. And if I'm wrong about that, someone should tell me.
The vehicle miles traveled law, that's not true. The state law on vehicle miles traveled, it's not about level of service. You're talking about the letter grades. It's not about that anymore. It's how far people travel to development. So
Say that one more time for me.
it's not about level of service. You're talking about level of congestion. The state changed the law years ago. It's about vehicle miles traveled, not how far people travel to different places. That's the CEQA environmental impacts. And we're talking about environmental impacts. It's not based on level of service and congestion anymore, unfortunately.
What's weird about that is we were just having that conversation about Encanto and the state of their roads relative to the density from the ADU law, and I was being pointed to the letter grades for the roads to explain how those developments shouldn't be allowed. So
The city can still have their own regulations on that, but the state environmental.
thank you. Thank you for pointing that out for me. Thank you for teaching me that.
On the city map that you were talking about, that shows like this area has the top map with how much housing development and everything we can have. Well, there was the Thrive building, and that was on that property, that was a part of that. On Arrow Drive, there was office park. And on, Mission Village and Ruffin Road, there were gas stations, there were businesses. And so that was there on that map. We haven't improved the infrastructure to support it. The immense amount of density that's now coming in on Arrow Drive.
Just so the people who can't hear, just in case, because I'm still struggling to hear you, basically you're saying
The original map that you said showed how much density or how much growth can happen.
Yep.
The Serra Mesa. Well, Fry's was there when that map was done.
Mhm.
The buildings on Arrow Drive were there, so it wasn't housing. The buildings on Ruffin Road and Gramercy Mission Village were businesses. The one at Mission Village in Shawn was a business. So that was there, and the infrastructure supported that. Now, all of a sudden, those buildings are gone, and we're creating intense density on those properties with the infrastructure that is not in place for that development. And so what we're doing is we're ingesting this neighborhood with too much built. When you look at the fires in LA, what happened, you just build it out to the max because it says you can have this many housing. We're not looking at the safety of the people in the community. There's not any amenities. We have one grocery store in 92123. We have to go out of our zone to get to it because those grocery stores have gone away. But we're gonna increase the density, limit the amount of parking because we want people to ride their bike or catch a bus. That's unrealistic and it's not fair to this community, and I feel it's unsafe in the long run. And Murray Ridge is impacted already, not with the new development, but if you could go anytime in the afternoon, like when people are starting to go home, it backs up all the way down to Nita Avenue. We're talking a couple of miles. That's gas burning. We need to remove the carpool lane to get onto the 805 South so that you have two lanes fully going, because that would move that traffic.
The Caltrans lane, I don't disagree with you that getting rid of the carpool lane would assist in moving people along. What I will tell you is that is completely out of my capability, given that's a state road, and that's just, they don't go backwards on those sorts of things. So just to be, I will tell you right now that you could contact Chris Ward, and when you get through Caltrans, District 11, all those sorts of things, taking a carpool lane off of a major thing like that, you're asking for more than a miracle. I'm just being very, very clear about the realistic chances of that happening. What I want to point out to you is you brought up a key component. I'm going to talk about two quick things. Safety, two, the grocery store. Let me start with the grocery store because that one's just easier. We cannot incentivize or create any sort of mechanism for anybody to build a grocery store. I don't understand why a market and a retail group doesn't see the demand within Serra Mesa, but they don't. Because there used to be an extra one right in the middle, and it got switched into a CVS, right? It was a Sprouts and got switched into a CVS. So I don't know why that is. I know I feel the drips coming too, which means we got to get to Stephanie Davis's question. Fire safety, 1000% top of my mind. What I will say is the evacuation routes that are set in place by the fire department and the police department, because they work together on this, have been dramatically improved from 2003 and 2007. Given the new density that's here, the whole point of those maps is to try to predict where a community is going to go. And I'm not saying they predict it accurately. I'm just saying that those maps are in place to create a fundamental groundwork for development so that everybody operates off the same rules. And you're saying, well, they've developed this, developed this, developed this, developed this, developed this. How do we make sure the infrastructure is there to make sure you're safe? If what you're asking me to do is talk to the fire department and say, hey, imagine there's a fire right here, and you have Stonecrest, you got Arrow Drive compacted, and now you're going to have 1,000 more units. How are you going to address that? Figure that out now before they start building it, right? So that is homework that I can go do. So thank you for giving me that assignment. We can do that in any area you want. Absolutely. The number one thing we can order is studies. Okay, all right. Yes. Stephanie Davis.
We received a statement in the mail that our water rate should ever go up again. And is that something that you want to? Because we just had a rate increase on January 1st of this year. Now they want another rate increase. And it's not only the water, but it's again the sewage. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't get fixed in. If I sent the paper in last year, vote against it, but it was unanimous. Was it?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Do you really need another one?
Stephanie brings up a good point. She asked about water rates. Because another notice went out saying the city council is going to vote on a potential water rate increase in the next several months. Here's how this works. There are basically two ways that we get our water in the city of San Diego. One is by purchasing water, well actually the three ways, because rain does count, when we fix our dams so that we can hold the water, which our city has not had enough funding for because of issues related to the pension, so we're behind on our dams so that state says we can't hold more water in them. So I'm telling you, man, the pension thing kills me. The water that we buy comes, we can import water from the Colorado River, and we can have water come from the Metropolitan Water Authority, which essentially runs the water supply through the middle of the state, and we buy it wholesale as the San Diego County Water Authority. The County Water Authority is formed of numerous public utilities. City of San Diego runs our own water utility. If you live in East County, you might have Helix Water Authority, Padre Dam Water Authority. If you live in Encinitas, it's the Olivenhain Water Authority, right? Down in South Bay, Sweetwater. So we all pay as a giant region money to buy that water to have it here. Right now, the city and partners in the East County area are investing in the pure water system so that we can recycle our own water so that we don't have to keep buying it and essentially flush the toilet. It goes through 9,001 processes. It's fixed, filtered, good, drops back in the reservoir and goes back through the natural water system, okay? Right now, all of our water is going out, all of our wastewater goes out through Point Loma, gets cleaned out there, and then there's a pipe that goes on the ground 4 miles into the ocean, basically, maybe 5, and so all that water gets sent out there. And we have an EPA waiver to be able to do that they could pull whenever they want, and we'd have to spend $6 billion to fix and upgrade the water cleaning systems at Point Loma. But we have a waiver right now. Our approach to make sure the government doesn't make us spend $6 billion on that program is we're building our own $3 billion program. So we're saving half the money by having this giant project, Pure Water. It's causing a lot of construction disruptions. Some of the contracts have escalated a lot. But believe me when I tell you, we'd rather spend $3 billion than $6 billion, okay? So that's not going online until the middle of next year, and then phase 2 is in the 2030s, at which point we'll get half of our water. So right now we gotta buy a lot of water. The pipes that bring that water down to San Diego County and into the city of San Diego, into your block, and into your home. To keep those things going, you gotta repair the pipes for the water authority. Now, the San Diego County Water Authority staff is working on an old mindset of how much we need to we have to invest so much more water, more money in the construction to get these pipes. And the city of San Diego gets 10 appointees to that board. We almost have half the appointees. The staff recommended a humongous raise in water rates, and our 10 people from the city that are appointed by the council and the mayor said, oh, no, you don't. Your metrics are way off, your projections are way off, you're counting on water that you're buying more water than you need because we need less water right now. And our city 10 on that board drove down the price to like 14%, something like that. It's in that range. We can either pass that on to the people who are buying the water, which is everybody, or we take it out of the general fund of the city of San Diego that pays for police, fire, a lot of streets, parks, and libraries. So the answer to your question is, do we really need to pay 4 point something more? The answer is yes, because if we don't, it's going to hurt other services. I gave you that whole background to explain to you how we're trying to keep costs down, how we fight against the county water authority because their staff, which is kind of it's kind of an unelected bureaucracy, so to speak, that makes these projections. We've fought with our own people in our own city water systems, say, no, you're overcharging our people, drive that number down. But other areas of the county say, no, we need to spend a little bit more on this, that, and the other. So we've fought to keep your water rates as down as far as possible. And that might sound like one of the craziest things you've ever heard, but I could go through hours and hours and hours of the negotiations and the votes that we've had to take and the questions we've had to make it as low as possible. The question is now, am I going to vote for the next water rate increase? The answer is yes. And I have to explain to you why. I see you shaking your head. You're like, it's already so expensive. I understand that. Well, there's two components to this. It's where do we make up the funding to pay the San Diego Water Authority what we owe them as a member for the stuff that they're investing in? We can't just stop paying them because we can't just have them cut the water off to us. The second thing is, where do we make up that money? It means we've got to lay off firefighters. It means we've got to lay off police officers. It means we've got to close libraries. The third component of this is we've had so many. It keeps growing. It's because the water rate increases through the 2010s were basically kept at nothing because they weren't predicting right how much they were going to need to improve their infrastructure to keep the water coming here. And you had a whole bunch of leaders saying, we don't need to spend money on this. we don't need to invest in this. We're gonna keep your rates low now. And then the bill comes due. Just like the pension problem, 22, 23, 24 years ago. They thought they'd be smart and not have to show you what was really going on. I don't like to vote yes on that, but I'm telling you in good faith, the only responsible thing for me to do is to vote yes on that, because otherwise I'd be lying to your face and then having to cut your police officers and cut other things in our community that would be the backup money for that.
More efficiency at the water department and other areas of government within San Diego.
The water departments,
We pay on, people getting hurt because they're checking meters. And now, I know it could be a small amount, but it's probably an impactful amount, so I'm not hearing anything about what do we do about waste.
that waste is completely separate from this component that you're talking about, because we are members of a water authority that says this is how much we're about to charge you, and we only have so much control. Like I said, we have 10 appointed members from the city. Like Todd Gloria, love him or hate him, I have to give him 1,000% credit for getting all 10 of those people to drive that rate down, because that piece of paper wouldn't say 4 point something, 4.3, 4.7. You know what it is?
But when Pure Water goes online and we stop buying as much water as we do now from the San Diego County Water Authority, would they then raise the rates to cover their losses since we're no longer using as much water?
The rates, when we start producing our own water, we're in a more competitive position to say, if you charge us more, we're just going to go to Colorado. We're going to continue to produce more of ours. The more competition is better, keeps prices down, and two, we're going to rely less on them. So fundamentally, the pure water system is the most important thing we can do.
So you're saying, no matter what we do, if we send this in.
No, I'm not saying whatever we do. It'll,
Send this in and say, we don't want you to vote for this, it's not gonna matter.
no, that's not what I'm saying. You're asking a very specific legal question. You get a notice of protest, and if enough people send in the notice of protest, essentially it stops. And then I don't know that it's ever happened. I actually don't know what happens after. I think it's a certain percentage of. I don't know if it's a majority or lower than that. I have to believe it's less than a majority, because you could just never imagine 250,000 of those coming in. But I'm not saying that whatever you do, it can't be fit. You are powerless. I'm just saying that it's a very high bar. If enough people don't send in the grievance, it's not a grievance, it's a protest letter. The vote comes to us, and then we take that vote. I'm gonna get to the related question in a second, because I understand how scary it is. The number of solutions that come our way for solving financial problems, the number of them that I have to say, sorry, we're just not going to do that one, is because we have before us a whole set of bad options. The reason we have such a set of bad options is because people from 20 years ago who put us in a deep, deep hole. Where are they right now? I understand that. But when a person comes to me and says, why don't you roll back Prop 13? We'd have a lot more property tax to pay for these sorts of things. I say, no. Yes, it is. No, I'm just.
All these old Prop 13 homes, like my parents.
Ma'am?
Prop 13. Most of those people have deceased and moved on, and they're now million-dollar homes. And the city has garnered a lot more tax revenue in the last 5 years because of the increase in housing.
Ma'am?
So what have we done with that extra money from property tax?
Ma'am, let me just finish my sentence here. The fastest growing group of homeless people, seniors who are on fixed budgets. People come and say, hey, let's just get rid of Prop 13 or do this or do that. I'm like, so what we're going to essentially do is make it, if we reassess all this property, make it extra hard for seniors to stay in their homes. I'm not going to do that. And I'm the youngest guy on council. The fact that things, and I know you're saying it's a cop-out, but if we had spent $300 million more a year on infrastructure over the last 20 years, instead of having a jumbo payment to the pension, we'd have wider roads, we'd have more brush management, we'd have enough city employees to do all that stuff. So you might say I'm copping out, but I'm also the only person who said, hey, here's what I think is the responsible thing to do to try to close it. Nobody else proposed that tax. I'm not saying you needed to vote yes or no based on that reason, but I would appreciate if you didn't say I was being dishonest and copping out, because I'm telling you what I see.
I didn't say you were dishonest, and the cop-out is because you mentioned
Well, isn't a cop-out basically trying to say that I'm being dishonest about this?
no, that's totally different, so please don't.
Maybe I took the wrong inference.
And we pay taxes at the pump, gas taxes, and those taxes are for the roads to repair. And back in '06, I believe, we paid Proposition B, and so we keep raising the gas taxes for the roads. The problem is that money should be for the roads, it goes into the general fund, and then it's not there to do the roads.
Ma'am,
Everything goes into the general
I'm
fund,
s-
and a lot gets spent where it really shouldn't be.
anything that's legally obligated to be spent on, I will say that 99.9% of the obligated funds the city spends, we spend it on the thing that the law requires us to do. Not going to make a complete 100% say that it happens every single time, because sometimes things go wrong, but that is something we're super careful of, because we learned the lesson from 2003. Don't screw around with the financials like that. I want to just say, I know it's not a satisfying answer for me to tell you that I think that is the only responsible action, but I'm also don't want to come to you. Now, there's council members who say, no, I'm not voting to pass that increase. What happens 6 years from now when the water pipe breaks because we didn't invest in it? We already have water pipes breaking. So, we have to, it's a hard decision to make. I don't just go up there and say, ha, easy, let's move along. I definitely don't. But that's why we have our people at the Water Authority who are on the board, those are meetings like nobody goes to and that the news does not talk about, because they are the super wonkiest things. But our 10 people show up there and say, no, you're not going to go 20%. You're going to keep it as, we've predicted that the only amount you need is 14%. Those are just examples. And the staff fights back and back and back, and we push all the other water districts to drive the cost down. So I hope you'll believe me when I tell you that the yes vote on that is because I feel it's absolutely necessary. Because if we get to July 1st and we have to pay the Water Authority bill, but we haven't passed on the cost, we're going to be set with another set of bad circumstances. Do we cut fire, police, parks, libraries more than we're already going to have to? It is not fun. I don't take it lightly.
There's gotta be other solutions. It's on our, it can't be on our backs. It can't be.
Is the Poseidon plant running at full capacity right now, the desal?
Out of Carlsbad and up in that,
The desal, yeah, for the whole city of San Diego, right?
no, it's for the North Coastal water districts.
Running at full capacity, I heard it wasn't.
I don't think it is, but don't quote me on that. It's not something that's on the top of my mind because it doesn't necessarily impact our components, but yeah. You know what we could do? We could have invested some of that money that we didn't have in keeping Lake Hodges higher so that we'd have to buy less water from the Water Authority, but we have to flush so much water down the drain into the ocean instead of capturing it. I don't think that's a cop-out. I think that's telling you what leaders in the past have failed to do. So,
Do you mind answering, what's the timeline on the clean water project?
Pure Water Project, first phase is supposed to go on in the middle, turn on in the middle of next year, I believe. Is it middle of 2026? These are rough numbers. You know, the numbers from the speeches.
Yeah.
A third of our local water should be from that. When we get phase 2 later on in the early part of the next decade, it should be up to 50% of our total water. Thank you. Yes? One more? Cindy, do you have a question that isn't? Okay, all right, thank you. You've gotten plenty of time for questions, Cindy, lately. No, I don't know if this is a French last name, if it's Dennis Lyon or Dennis Leon. Lyon,
It's a real localized one.
please.
I'm on the board at Bridgeport HOA,
Yes.
and the riparian trail runs behind our community as it does in many communities.
Yeah.
It is eroding, and our fences are beginning to fall over because the concrete they're setting has no dirt around them, and some of our homeowners' patios that run out there are actually having no dirt on them and supporting them.
Unstable.
We've gone to a MAD, Maintenance Assessment District, that we all pay into, that maintain that, and that is their responsibility. We found that in their paper. However, in I think 2009, they just took a vote and said, we're not gonna put any more money toward that. We're gonna, no more allocation for erosion control. Well, that's easy to say, but we're stuck now with people going, what the hell's going on? The dirt washing away.
And their deck could fall through, yeah.
So we don't know who to go to now to find out who's gonna help pay for putting that dirt back up and holding all that back where it should be, because they say they don't wanna do it.
The city staff that operationalizes the MAD?
Carlos is his name, he's our representative from MAD.
Okay.
He said that they're not gonna take responsibility for it, even though it really is theirs, they're not gonna do it. So
All right.
what do? Do we sue? I mean, we don't wanna do that.
I don't understand how they could charge you money to repair something and then just say this one component of it we're actually not doing. That doesn't sound contractually correct.
And at one time, they did come and repair, they set a precedent. They came and put dirt and riprap up there, and they put the straw bales along it to hold that all. So I know that they know that was their responsibility. They didn't say, you know what we're doing anymore, that's it, bye-bye.
Okay,
So now what do we do?
understood. Let's dig into that. Miles, do you have anything about that?
I don't.
Okay. Let's get your email and your cell phone number after the meeting so that we can set up that meeting. And your whole HOA is impacted? Or your
Right now,
whole,
it's 2 or 3 homes that are start seeing erosion start, but it goes all the way downhill. And many of the communities do sit on the riparian trail.
Got it.
And they're gonna face probably the same thing we are in time.
understood. Very hyper-localized, but hyper-solvable from our point of view. Okay, thank you. So, where are we? You know what? Let's just do one more question, because I know Vic was, yes?
We had from the chat.
Oh, okay, let's go. That's fair.
There was one that was really interesting. If there could be an updated, back to the Fry's project, an updated traffic study, because they're saying it was done during COVID. I don't know if that's true or not, but traffic study, and if the developer could be compelled to do an egress on Murphy Canyon instead of just depending on Stonecrest Road.
Understood. So, the person is asking us to go ask the developer to commit to some amenities as well as a study.
Study could push something like that.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I don't know about the grass component, but the traffic study itself would probably be very helpful.
Egress.
Oh, egress. Oh, I heard grass.
No,
I was like, all right, and egress is AI-produced grass. Okay, no.
The entrance is gonna be Stonecrest Boulevard.
Yep, that's right.
And then maybe Daly Center, but there could go egress in Murphy Canyon.
Certainly. Okay, great point. All right. We got that, Miles? Good question? Okay. Steve Gilmore was going to be the last question, but we just took the...
Why do we all listen to everybody if we're not gonna pick all the names out of the hat?
Yeah, everybody just kind of raised their hand ad
Yeah,
hoc, and
people
we didn't know that
started
was gonna happen.
yelling out, and now those of us with our name in the box.
Well, as I pointed out, if there was a connected question related to what people were asking, to be able to develop off of those themes is where we went.
Well, when it was fire, you said you'd get back to it.
Okay.
What was that question that he asked? We couldn't hear it.
Oh, his question was, can we get another traffic study done related to the development over where the Fry's is was, so that we can see if egresses can be set back. Did I summarize that correctly? Sorry, I didn't say that out loud. The idea is that they did do an initial traffic study, but that it was done at a low point related to COVID. So let's just see if that is accurate. Real quick question. I mean, there's literally 20 more questions in here. I know there was a lot of people who wanted to ask questions.
Well, burn Joe Crisp, none of this is gonna matter. Think about that. If we have so many canyons in Serra Mesa, and we have so much brush that needs to be abated, none of this will matter. We saw what happened in the Palisades
Altadena all the way to Pasadena fire. And we've got a hotbed right here in Serra Mesa of canyons that are not maintained. And whose responsibility? You've got right here on the first page, it sounds like the responsibility is of the homeowners. Who enforces that? I live in an area of Serra Mesa that's an isosceles triangle. Like this. This is where I live in Serra Mesa. This is Gramercy. This is Ruffin Canyon. This is Sandrock Canyon. And this is Mowgli. And we've got one road in and we've got one road out. One road in and one road out and hundreds of homes. And we've got the canyons that are not properly maintained. If it's up to the homeowners, like this indicates, who enforces it? I've been talking to your office, and by the way, your office staff are phenomenal. We have not had this since Donna Fry.
You know who my chief of staff, used to work for?
Donna Fry.
Donna Fry.
Well, they learned from the best, and you're carrying on a good tradition with that. And I've been talking to your staff, and one of the suggestions was that I go in front of the houses along the canyons and use the Get It Done app. That's not going to work. I can't go to every last house up and down Ruffin Canyon and Sandrock Canyon. Did any of you watch the front line on the Maui fires? What was one of the main issues? One way in and one way out. Now we have to come up. There are phenomenal minds in this room. I am so impressed by all of you. But we need to come up with a solution that canyon, and you've got one right here behind you too. I've hiked that many times. But you guys have more than one way in and one way out. And I don't in my little area of Serra Mesa.
Thank you for coming.
We also pay for our own brush management in this canyon. So I live in a neighborhood where people don't pay for their own brush management.
I will say this, because you're asking for a solution, but though you didn't ask a question, but I can hear the question behind what you're saying.
Who enforces what you're saying on the first page of this handbook?
Yeah. So
That's my question.
there's a component of the fire department. Like, I'm not sure if I didn't say this, but if your neighbors who are supposed to be keeping that up, I don't want anybody to get a ticket, but there is a fine for not living up to your end of the bargain and pushing back more than 100 feet of space on your property, okay?
Is it my responsibility to turn them in? I know we live in a coup right now, but I'm not ready to do that in Serra Mesa.
Good point. Call Elon, he'll fix it for you.
Well, Serra Mesa.
Off the record, let us turn them in, and they won't be mad at you. They can be mad at me for not doing their part. Like, we just had this with we had a road that's very similar situated to what you're talking about in San Carlos that was described to us last week. Person who said, I spent $1,300, $1,500 of my own money to live up to my end of the bargain, but I got 2 neighbors out of 7 that are not, and we're all at risk because of them. And I'll tell you exactly what I told them. Come to us with those addresses so that we can have the inspector go out and put the notice on the front of their door. Okay?
We tried to get insured. We tried to get insured by AAA a couple of years ago. We have State Farm, and we're not leaving them because we don't dare. AAA said, you are uninsurable because you are 3 houses from a canyon. They wouldn't even give us an estimate.
Serra Mesa's received tons of money for brush clearing. There's been a lot of brush clearing in recent years by canyons.
Get on Google Earth and look at my little isosceles triangle.
What I'm going to look into, particularly for your, and this applies to anybody who lives in a one-way in, one-way out thing. So remember that the chemical I was talking about earlier that our fire department is applying, I think the first set of parts of the community where they've said we're going to apply this are places that have one way in, one way out. There's a component there's a part of Navajo Canyon that has that exact description. I remember we were Anthony, is Anthony still here? You're in the back. We were looking at that for a piece of Navajo Canyon. Let's see if they've done their job and said, hey, these are the parts of Ruffin Canyon and everything else in Serra Mesa. Linda Vista has some of these roads too. Terra Santa has some of these roads too. We are the most canyon heavy, well, I don't know, District 3 has a lot of canyons, but if you live in District 7, you live close to a canyon or you live close to Coles Mountain. And yeah, I hear you loud and clear. So, Miles, can we get your address? You got your address, okay. Tell everybody here else your address. No, I'm just joking, that's fine. Thank you very much. I know we're at 8 o'clock, so to respect the time, I'm gonna be around for.
Real quick, this is very, very, very important.
Yes.
I called your office, and I'm not blaming anybody. They're supposed to pass it on to you. And I went through all kinds of people. The city gave me different phone numbers. I was trying to find out how often do they check the fire hydrants around this area, and no one had an answer anywhere. Someone said, I think once a year. I was trying to get the records, and no one had the records.
Thanks for
to show
coming.
me how often are the fire hydrants checked here. If the fire hydrants don't work, we're in trouble.
Let me talk about fire hydrants real clear. That was one of the first questions I asked Chief Logan right after the LA fire started. I said, hey, we're hearing, this is crazy. This is not, it sounds counterintuitive. How could the fire hydrants not have water in them? Part of the reason that happened is so many houses were on fire with their faucets open because, they're blown off by fire, that there was no pressure. Generally speaking, there just was no pressure. He did say that there is a regular check, not sure necessarily what regular is, and they've replaced a lot of fire hydrants over the course of the last several years because there's new technology, get them off easier, this and that. But what I want you to know is that if you have water coming out of your faucet, it means the pipe on your street has water pressure, and the fire hydrants are connected to the same water line. So, not saying that you should feel 1,000% comfortable just being like, well, if my shower works, it means my fire hydrant works. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm guaranteeing. I'm just saying, if the water works on your street, the likelihood of your fire hydrant working is very, 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 very close to 100%. Okay?
And they're stealing the fire hydrants in LA. Guaranteed. They get $100 for scrap metal, and it costs like thousands to put them back in. So watch out.
That's crazy. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to end real quick because I know people are heading out and it's starting to get rain here a little bit. This is just what I want to say. First of all, I appreciate you staying so long. Second of all, if we didn't get to your question, I'm very sorry. This was our biggest town hall by far, okay? So thank you for making that the case. Part of it is having it in a community where you could literally just walk here. But I want you to know how I appreciate you saying the nice things about my staff, because I agree with you. A couple years ago, my priest gave me a book and said, Raul, you need to read this. It's going to really impact how you think about delivering services and think about your own life. And I was like, okay. It was called Unreasonable Hospitality. Has anybody read that book? Just my staff, because I bought 10 copies and said, guys, read this over the next couple of weeks, and then I'll buy you lunch and we'll talk about it for a couple hours, because it was like a mini retreat. The book is about the general manager of the world's best restaurant for several years, 11 Madison Park. The guy's name is Will Gadara. And he wrote a book from the general manager point of view, not the cook point of view. And he always wanted to make his restaurant have the 3 Michelin stars and rank the highest ranked that. And eventually it got rated #1 restaurant in the world. And he determined that the reason that happened is because it wasn't that the food was so good, because it certainly was expensive. It was that the hospitality was delivered at such a high level that it just blew people away. It was a unique experience. And he said, you got to go beyond reasonable hospitality, aim for unreasonable hospitality. And the anecdote of all anecdotes is how he has 4 guys from Amsterdam who went to the 5 best restaurants, and they were ending at his in New York, and they said, the only thing we didn't do in town was get a Nathan's hot dog. He overheard that, he ran outside, got 2 Nathan's hot dog, went to the master chef, who's the guy who got the 3 Michelin stars, and said, cut these up, put them together, get them ready. And the guy's like, excuse me, these are Nathan's hot dogs. I'm better than this. He's like, just do it. The chef puts them up, delivers them, gets it all ready. He walks out and says, gentlemen, we couldn't let you leave New York without having a Nathan's hot dog. And the guys' minds are just blown. The fact that they were being heard, the fact that a small little gesture means so much. That's what I'm trying to do. That's what my staff's trying to do. We can't deliver everything, and I promise you, we will never overpromise on things that we can't deliver. But here's the thing. Every interaction we go into, we're saying we want to get back to you as fast as possible. We want to talk to you personally. We want to make sure you know we're thinking about it. And I wish the person who was here to talk about water rates would be here to hear this. But I know that life is extra not easy right now. And we're trying to deliver as much as humanly possible. And I'm trying to do it in the most honest way possible after thinking through as many solutions as possible, many of which you give me. So I know that many of my answers were not satisfactory tonight, but I hope you'll know we're going to keep doing town halls. You're going to continue to keep getting the ability to have a meeting with me and bend my ear personally, not off, but bend, okay? That would be unreasonable on your part to bend it off. But we want to deliver unreasonable hospitality, and I really appreciate that you pointed out that we're carrying on a tradition from one of San Diego's great council members in Donna Fry to try to deliver for you. Being the legislative branch doesn't mean we can operationalize everything that you want, but it means that we can go hold people accountable and make sure if they don't get us answers that we're going to vote no on things, or say, hey, we're not ready to vote on these things. That's my promise to you. We're going to continue to try to deliver unreasonable hospitality. Thank you for your time tonight.